Well, here we are back in Phoenix, Arizona, here in the regular studio. And let me just mention right up front, as soon as the program's over, 10 minutes maybe after the program's over, I'm going to be hooking up with the apologetic dog, Jeremiah, back there in Jonesboro. First question I'm going to ask him is, I've heard people in his own church pronounce his last name Nortier, which would be every French person on the planet is going to spit at that pronunciation because that's not right. Nortier would be correct. All right. But you're in Arkansas, so there may be laws against pronouncing things as the French would in Arkansas. I mean, look at my shirt. Toad Suck, Arkansas. Okay? Toad Suck, Arkansas. I asked for this shirt because I've driven through Toad Suck, Arkansas. It's outside of Conway, and it's on the way to Renewal Ranch. There's a guy named Jerry out there Jerry is the truck whisperer, okay? Jerry knows GMC engines like the back of his hand. When we had our 2018 that we initially started with, pulling our first RV, he stood there and he said, okay, that hose will wear out at 60,000 miles. That hose at 75, and the one back there at 80. And I'm like, how do you know this? And they used to have the contract to maintain the Conway Police Department police cars. And guess what engine those they had the same engine as my truck. So knows that kind of stuff inside and out. And now that we have a diesel, I brought it out to him for some tender loving care and some examination. When I hear clunks and stuff like that, I want to have an expert look at it, and he said the truck's in great shape, and that we're taking good care of it. Anyways, to get out there, I have to drive through Toad Suck, Arkansas. And so I made reference to Toad Suck, Arkansas. I'm not sure what the population is, but it can't be more than about 100. But I made reference to it in my sermon 2 Sundays ago, at Providence Baptist Church in Perryville. And so when the pastor, Quattro Nelson, of that church came to Jonesboro to moderate the 2-on-2 debate on last Friday night, For Whom Did Christ Die, he brought me a gift package. I've got a coffee mug and some refrigerator magnets and this shirt from Toad Suck, Arkansas. No, I have not taken the time to look into exactly how that got named, and I'm not really certain that I want to find out exactly how it got named. But anyway, all of that was a divergence from my trying to tell you that basically as soon as we're done here, maybe just enough time for the old man to run to the restroom and back again, I'm going to be jumping on with Jeremiah Nortier, the apologetic dog, and we'll be talking about the St. Ignatius distraction. Now even then, we're going to talk about the debates, both the debates. I'll be talking about the debates on this program. We don't necessarily have the exact same audience, but I think there's a lot of crossover. But still, next Tuesday at 6 o'clock Eastern. Now, I understand that you all play with your clocks Sunday, unless the king decrees otherwise. Someone, a media guy, I just saw a clip, was asking the king about daylight savings time, and the king's response was, well, it's a 50-50 issue. And there's some people that like it lighter late, and some people want it lighter early because they don't want to take their kids to school in the dark. So, it's a 50-50. And I'll be honest with you, we here in Arizona are going to be really, really tempted to join Canada if we are forced into permanent daylight savings time, to where because this is why. In 1977, I lived here. I had moved here in 74. I've been here over 50 years now. That makes me a native. And 1977 and 78, it lasted for 2 years, and then we kicked it out. We joined daylight savings time. And I remember clearly what the result was. In late June into July, you would literally try to go to bed at 10 o'clock at night. It was still light outside. Now, the sun wasn't up, but it was still light outside, and it'd be 110 degrees. That's not fair. It shouldn't be that way. It really, really shouldn't. And so we voted it back out real fast, and it's a pain. It is a royal, royal pain. Time is time. Quit messing around with it. We'll see what happens. So anyway, 6 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, starting this coming weekend. Here on the program, Timothy Easley, who is responsible for this entire debacle personally, he is personally responsible for it, is going to be joining me, and we're going to do a deep dive on Ignatius, the Ignatian corpus, which is all the documents, all the questions about when Ignatius lived, all the reignition of... See, a lot of this stuff had been discussed long ago. And sort of a conclusion had been arrived at, and it was sort of settled for a while. It wasn't that the data changed. It's that, now you can analyze things with computers, and you can do that a little bit better, and you've got wider access to stuff. And so starting about 1998 or so, well, really before that with Huebner's stuff, but especially as far as the number of articles and stuff goes, you have a lot of discussion about the recensions and the textual veracity and everything else in regards to the Ignatian corpus. And there's really no direct parallel to anyone else in church history. I mean, there's people in church history we know very, very little about, and almost everything we know about them is from secondary and tertiary sources and stuff like that. But as far as someone who supposedly has literary remains of some extent, this is unique. And Timothy had been talking to me about this for a few months. I had sort of thought, well, if I can find some time between debates, what I'd like to do is have him on, and we could just throw this around, and I'll play devil's advocate, and I'll defend the older, what I was taught in seminary, Lightfoot position, basically, because I've always used Lightfoot's translation. Even when the Holmes stuff came out, I still preferred Lightfoot because I had my old marked up copy, and it's sort of like Jeff Durbin and his favorite jeans, which he wears all the time. All three elders, aside from Jeff, have gotten together and have tried to figure out how we could sneak into his house and burn all the jeans that he has. So he has to buy new jeans. Because I just saw a picture of him speaking in Georgia. And be praying about that. It's a huge, huge situation in Georgia in seeking equal protection. But there he is in a nice suit coat, wearing the same jeans he wears every single day. It's just wrong. There's something completely and totally wrong about it. But anyway, okay. I'm sorry. I thought Jeremiah was texting me about the pronunciation of his name. I had actually written to him, so you don't have a hard start time, and he said correct. So if you want to, also include that, Jeremiah, I don't want to pick on you. Anyway, so I was going to have Timothy Easley on, and we were just going to, I was going to sort of play devil's advocate and say, okay, what about this? What about that? And just have a geeky conversation. It won't be as much of a geeky, it will be a geeky conversation, but it won't be as fun because we'll be responding to the silliest controversy that I've ever seen come up after a debate. Just vacuous. That's the only way I can describe it. Someone, and we'll talk about it later, came up with the idea that I was attacking Ignatius. So now this is someone who I can guarantee you has never read Hubner, has never read any of these articles that are dealing with the Syriac recension and the relationship to, statements by, in what about in Polycarp, and what about when Origen makes reference to Ignatius, and the guy who started all this just really doesn't know what in the world he's talking about. But he decided that I have attacked Ignatius. And of course, there are so many people. If you want to get a good idea of who's serious and not serious in the Roman Catholic apologetics world, if they've jumped onto this, they're not serious. If you can take a single cross-exam question that was asked with 90 seconds to go in the second round, it's not on the topic of the subject, completely ignore the substance of the response, which is the clear anti-docetic polemic in Smyrnians and anywhere else. It's ubiquitous in the middle recension, if those are the genuine letters. If you can take that and try to create a controversy out of it, you are the picture of desperation. You have no concern about you are only concerned about what the people who might send you some money on Patreon think. That's all you're concerned. You don't care about your integrity. You don't care about it long term. Wow, just astonishing. So we'll be talking about that next Tuesday, 6 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. If you like to get into really geeky stuff, we'll be doing that. But I would imagine Jeremiah and I will also be talking about, well, even when we talk about the debates, since Jeremiah was in the first debate and moderated the second, then he can provide some personal insights that I won't provide as we talk about the debates today. But before we get to all of that, so much stuff going on. So excited about the next trip. and I'll tell you, I'm really excited because I think, I really think that part of why I ended up, when you think about what happened, we pull the RV into this new park we've not been to before. And we get it into a pull-through slot, and I hook up the water, and I turn the water on, and it just starts pouring out the bottom of the unit. And you'll remember, I told you, somebody forgot to put a hose back on. And that's what it was, right? Somebody just got to put the hose. Now, I don't know how you could pressure test it without putting that hose back on. Oh, okay. So the clamp was finger tight, and yeah, okay. So, I had a feeling that it would be a quick fix, but Rich and I were looking at the weather. Rich called one of the parks to try to move our reservation, because once you make a reservation, if you cancel it, you lose the money. If you move it, then you can keep it. And, so I'll try to use these on my future trips. But one of them, where it was supposed to be 2 degrees the night that I was pulling in, and it did get down to those temperatures. It was frigid cold. The lady at the park, I think, told Rich, well, of course, no one's pulling an RV in this weather. And it's like, yeah, okay. But then it warmed up really quickly. And I'm like, man, I really wish I had my RV. But on the way home, I'm going to tell you something. That wind in Amarillo, I've not been in wind like that in a not since the last major dust storm here in Phoenix. And those dust storms only last like 20 minutes.
Did you see the video of the rig going through Oklahoma? I think it was the day you were going through Amarillo. And somebody's following and had a camera on, and it starts swaying, and then it went right over. Just got blown right over.
I didn't see any that had tipped over, but the wind hit as I got to Amarillo. And the next morning, it had snowed. And by the time I got up, it was raining. And the wind the day before had been gusts over 65, but pretty steady at 50, 60 miles an hour. I'd say it was down to about 40, but it was still blowing like anything. It had literally blown the tonneau cover of my truck up onto the back of the cab. Okay, I mean, I've just never seen anything like that in my life. So I don't know what I would have done if I had the unit, because I'm not pulling that thing in 60 mile an hour winds. Ain't happening. Just no, it's not gonna happen. So I would have had to have stayed wherever I was. The problem is, what if you start in the morning and it's not bad, and halfway through the day, that stuff starts happening? What do you do then? I don't know, but I'll find out someday. I'm sure I will. So anyway, we just got word that the unit, they're only waiting on one thing left in the unit, heat strip for the back air conditioning unit. So I'll have three different ways of heating the unit, which during the summer here is really irrelevant, but when it's cold, it's cold. There's no two ways about it. But the big thing is, I have shock absorbers. I am so excited. You know, I think of so many people and what gets them excited, and what am I excited about? I've got shock absorbers because I'm going to Louisiana. and even everybody in Louisiana will agree with me. It's good to have shock absorbers in Louisiana. They may not last long, but it's good to have. So I am excited about this next trip. It's coming up pretty quick. Let's see, today's the 6th. When do we pick her up? Do you remember? I'm trying to remember when it is, because April 4th, so April 4th is less than a month away, and I will have, 27th? Okay. So, I'm going to Livingston. Livingston is South Louisiana. That's where we had the Jimmy Akin, not really debates, last year. And that's Brian Gunther's church. Always have a great time. We're there. And I'm going to be debating a man from the King James Bible Society, I think it's what it's called, on whether the King James is the best English translation. And he has assured us he's not a Ruckmanite and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And I believe him, so hopefully it will be a useful encounter. And then I'm going to head north, and I'm going to hook up with Trey Fisher. Now, Trey Fisher has been talking to the dear young lady who keeps all of us elders at Apologia going the right direction. Reminds us, did you remember to do that? Oh, no, forgot that. This is coming up. Oh, yeah, that's right. And her name's Christine. And so he had been asking her, James keeps coming to Louisiana, but he doesn't come up here to see us. So we need to fix that. And so I was already talking to Skip Rainbolt about coming up toward the Shreveport area while avoiding the roads in the Shreveport area as much as possible. And so I'm going to do if this is Louisiana, I'm going to do this, which is sort of, okay, let's do it for the camera, like this. So I'm going to start down here in Livingston. I'm going to go up to where Trey Fisher is. That's sort of mid-northern Louisiana, and then back across, I think it's a 20 there. I think it's a 20, to Skip Rainbow's place. And so I've got a debate on the 4th, and now I have debate, I think it's, did we say it was the 7th? No, it couldn't be the 7th. 10th. Yeah, so one on the 4th, one on the 10th. I'm going to be debating a fellow from the Church of Christ on Romans 9. So we don't have the graphics and contact stuff, location, time, all that stuff yet. I think the first debate stuff, it will be a ticketed event because there's only so many seats. And I think Brian said this weekend that'll go live and be available. I'm not sure about the other one, but we will try to get the graphics up and at least posted on Twitter and on the website for those of you in Louisiana. And when you're in northern Louisiana, then there's states up there that you're actually closer to than southern Louisiana. So people in that particular area might want to come out and be a part of that. So that'll be debates 196 and 197. So we're getting there. We're moving toward the big 200. And we'll see how that goes. And so I'm looking forward to that. And as I said, I really think that this last motel trip, dragging bags and 2 pieces of luggage and stuff up and down stairs and into elevators in Jonesboro. Yeah, in Jonesboro. One night, about 10 o'clock, I had just gotten in. I was trying to take some stuff up to my room. And I hit the button and it opens and this guy is standing there. And he's just staring into space. And there's liquid all over the floor. Strange smell. It wasn't that kind of smell. There's an open beer bottle on the floor. And this guy is 3 sheets to the wind. I mean, he's just... It's 10 o'clock at night. And so he eventually just sort of wanders out of the thing. I get in through the liquid, whatever it is, and go up the top floor. The door opens, and there's 2 people that should not be in a hotel right outside the thing. I mean, it was uncomfortable. I mean, I've got a bunch of stuff in my hands. I'm pretty much defenseless. It was not a lot of fun. And it's like, okay, you haven't run into anybody weird in an RV park? Not that weird, and not in an elevator. I've not been in any elevators in an RV park. No, haven't had to do any of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, no. I think this is all just a reminder of just how blessed I am to have a house and that I can take with me. And I can't prove it, but I really have to wonder if the problems I had a problem during the first debate. Starting about a third of the way through the debate, I went into supraventricular tachycardia and irregular heart rhythm. That never happened in a debate. It has happened in preaching. I once preached an entire sermon at the seminary, actually at Grace Bible Church, but host of the seminary, in Conway while in SVT. So I can survive it. It's not fun. It's very distracting. It doesn't hurt. It just, it's not working right. This time, for the only second time in my life, all of a sudden, during an audience question that was actually texted in, it was Turretin fans' audience question, I sort of felt something change. And I'm like, oh, good. It's stopping. And then I realized it wasn't stopping. I had gone from SVT into AFib. And AFib, I had never done that before just a few weeks ago. And you go, how do you know that? Good to have this. Now, it's not what I was thinking about when I got it, but I reached down and did a ECG on my Apple Watch, and it said, "Hey, you're in AFib." It's like, great. And so I'll mention this with Jeremiah here, but there were, I think, 2 times when we had like a 30-second response to give. They're right at the end of the debate. I said, do it, because I was feeling horrible, and I remained functional, but I figured, and he handled it super well. It was Good that was a 2-on-2 debate situation at that point. No problems at all the next night. But then Monday night happened again. Once I got to Amarillo, and I can't prove it, but I really think that wouldn't have happened if I had the RV. If I had my own bed, had my own food, the hotel food and stuff like that was driving me nuts. And the nice thing about being in the RV is I continue to eat what I normally eat. There's continuity even while traveling. And I think that may have been what triggered it. We'll find out. But just a reminder to be thankful for what the Lord provides. And other people are thankful that they don't that they fly in and fly back out. That's fine. That's great. That's wonderful. But anyway, so big Louisiana trip coming up. And hope everybody back there puts those dates on your calendar as soon as we get them up. But again, it's April 4th in Livingston, April 10th. I don't know the location, but it's on the 20 corridor between Shreveport and places east. I'm just looking at it on the map, which reminds me, I still haven't made my reservations yet, so I need to do that when I get home tonight as best I can. Though, for those type of things, you frequently have to do it during the day. If it's not a KOA, you normally have to call and make a reservation to a human being. What a concept that is. So, all right. While I was gone, this book arrived, and I just saw it. I have not had a chance to even start digging into it, but I think it's appropriate in light of, I'd like to, it's published by Westminster Seminary Press. I'd like to see if there's a electronic version of it. I'll look for it. It's entitled "The Future of Reformed Apologetics: Collected Essays on Applying Van Til's Apologetic Methodology to a New Generation." Contributors like K. Scott Oliphant and James Anderson, Brian Mattson, people like that. And so I'm really looking forward to that, and would like I said, track it down in electronic format so I get to listen to it while driving or something like that. But take a look for that. James Anderson was working on his PhD years and years and years ago in I think Edinburgh, as I recall, and he was our nighttime channel op in Prosopologion for years, because he would be hours ahead of us, and so he was one of my ops in the channel, and had the honor of filling in for him when he was on sabbatical at RTS in Charlotte one summer just for a class. That was one of the classes that Abdullah, I'm sorry? Yeah, Abdullah Kunda got up at like 3 o'clock in the morning and like hid in a closet because he had kids to join that class and talk with the students in that class and answer questions. This was before Zoom, so it was on something like Skype. I think it was Skype. I'm sure Skype's a whole lot better than it used to be, if it still exists. I think Zoom has put a crimp in a lot of people's style. But anyway, that was I was teaching for James Anderson at that point. But looking forward to looking at that. And then I had this ordered in. And I got a bunch of books on Kindle as well. But titled "The World of Marian Apparitions" by Wincenty Lazuski. Good luck spelling that. Mary's Appearances and Messages from Fatima to Today. And there's Mary with a big old honking crown on her head. You know, that's real, all about the biblical Mary. But there's also a section on Zaytun in here. I happened to just open up to it. Yeah, Zaytun, 1968. Nice, full, glossy pictures and stuff like that. And so it's called The Silent Lady because never said anything. So this is the most famous picture, I think, right here. Up here, there's this thing. And you think about it, there were all sorts of Muslims who witnessed this as well. And what would be the one message that Muslims would need? They need to hear that Jesus was crucified, buried, and rose again. Because Surah 4:157 denies that. But somehow, you get the attention of all these Muslims and you leave them in the dark. Yeah. There's, I agree with a lot of other folks. There are definitely supernatural appearances. But when you look at the messages and you look at what's said, not coming from heavenly beings. No, it's not. So those just came, so I'm looking forward to diving into those. So I did promise a debate review for you all, and so I'll sort of focus upon the first debate because, like I said, next week, and then Jeremiah and I will say more, in half an hour from now or so, 40 minutes, something like that. But these debates were put together very quickly, and I've explained why in the past. I did not, up until the election, have much in the way of confidence about what was coming. What would be the state of things? What would be the freedom to travel? What would be the economic situation? Very easy to see how the wild-eyed, money-laundering leftist radicals that have been bleeding this nation dry in a treasonous fashion. It's not easy. It's not difficult to see what a mess they would have been making out of things. And let me just say in passing, I did catch portions of Trump's speech. It was going on when I got home. Because I cut a day off the trip. I left from Amarillo, and I just looked at the clock, and I looked at Google, and I went, you know what? It's dangerous, but I'm going to push through. It's 11 hours on the road. I don't like driving alone for 11 hours. It can get a little bit dangerous, especially with the wind I was having and stuff like that. But I didn't have the units, so my big pickup certainly got buffeted around by the wind, but she weighs 7,000 pounds, so it wasn't too bad. But I got home a day earlier, so it was in the evening. And I was born when John F. Kennedy was still alive. I don't remember him because he died before I would have become cognizant of such things. But I do remember Johnson. But I've just never seen anything like this. And part of you wants to chuckle, part of you wants to party, part of you wants to go, man, this is great to see these wild-eyed leftist loons put in their place. You know, when he looks over at all those Democrats sitting there stoically and says, we were told that we needed legislation to secure the border. It turns out all we needed was a new president. It's just, to have the young lady there who's been damaged by a guy pretending to be a girl in sports, and they had all just voted the day before to keep that, to not allow that to be permanently ended. Their behavior, their worldview, and I'm not stopping using that word because I don't care what Stephen Wolf says. Stephen Wolf doesn't have a clue what he's talking about, these things. Those people are just vile. But, sorry, at the same time, there are certain aspects of this stuff that it really seems that we have two nations living within one border, even if we've closed the border finally. And eventually, The other side's going to have the power, and I just don't see how any nation can survive swinging pendulum-like from one extreme back to the other extreme, back to the other extreme. You can't make any long-term progress that way. It's not possible. And as I've said, that's not what the founders envisioned and wanted in the first place. So, yeah, I chuckled. I loved. Was it DJ? Was it DJ? The young boy that wants to be a brain cancer, and when the head of the Secret Service gives him his, and everybody keeps saying honorary. I didn't hear Trump say that. I didn't hear Trump say that. I heard him saying you're a agent of the Secret Service, and Trump can do that. There's a lot of stuff Trump thinks he can do, but I think that's one thing he really can do. He's sort of in charge there. And when his dad picks him up and he's holding his credentials up, and the head of the Secret Service that gave it to him is standing there, smiling, and then he leans over and hugs him. The look on it's just like, oh man, who started cutting onions? I mean, wow. But then to see the Democrats sitting there stone-faced, it's like, are you people even human? Is Men in Black real? I mean, seriously. Yeah.
Did you pick up on what they said of who that guy who's been appointed to be the head of the Secret Service is?
No.
He was on the detail that hustled Trump out of Butler.
He looked familiar.
He was the lead agent.
He looked familiar. Wow. That's called getting up the ladder quickly by risking your life. But hey, that makes sense, So, yeah. And I just looked over here. Trump takes questions after signing executive orders. I think he's already taken more questions in a month and a half than not only than Biden took in 4 years, but that Biden and Obama took in 12 years. Wow.
It's possible. I'd like to do a comparison between where we are now with the questions taken and answered of Trump and his first administration.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have that many press conferences. Now it's almost like daily. He's just hammering it out.
Yeah, it's very different than it was in 2016. He's learned a lot. Yeah. So anyway, how did I get on that? I looked over at that and then I get distracted. So all of that being, I contacted Jeremiah and I said, hey, could you put anything together? And he says, let me get on it. And I said, I'd also like to see if we could do a 2-on-2 debate. And you bet. So he had a number of possibilities, but he wanted to sort of go a certain direction. And the first debate, there's been very little discussion of it, at least that I've seen. In fact, there's been very little discussion of the second debate outside of the silliness of James White doesn't believe Ignatius existed, and he's mean to Ignatius, and he's a bad man, and he's crazy. And it's like, wow, okay. The one thing that was nice about the two topics is that they were directly related. The first debate, for whom did Christ die? The second debate is the mass of propitiatory sacrifice. What is a propitiatory sacrifice? How does propitiation take place? And especially when Heschmeyer was doing the, there's a time gap between the death on the cross and the ascension to heaven and enthronement and intercession. As if what that does is that somehow opens the door for the cross to be perpetuated over time. And I started off the debate with a quotation that I don't believe I have ever used before, to be honest with you. Let me see here. Yeah, here it is. I don't believe ever. In fact, I'm pretty certain it's not in the Roman Catholic controversy. And it was very helpful, I think, to have this. Oh, I really don't like monospace stuff. Let me see where it went here. Here it is. As priests, this is from Presbyterorum Ordinis, Section 5, December 7th, 1965, promulgated by Pope Paul VI. Priests, as cooperators of the Episcopal Order, are consecrated to preach the gospel and to shepherd the faithful and to celebrate divine worship, especially in the Eucharistic sacrifice, which is the source of some of the whole Christian life. In the Eucharistic sacrifice, which is the true and proper sacrifice, they offer, in the person of Christ, the propitiatory sacrifice of the sins of the living and the dead, and they apply its fruits to the people entrusted to them. By this sacrifice, the Church, through Christ the High Priest, perpetuates the sacrifice of the cross throughout the ages. The Church perpetuates the sacrifice of the cross throughout the ages. But that perpetuation does not perfect anyone for whom it's made. And if you go back all the way here, my first book, I think is 1989. Well, I take that back. January of 90. Wrote it in 89. January of 90. Copyright 1990. Yep. Whole point, the teachings of Roman Catholicism deny the gospel. The whole point was that fundamentally, when you compare what the sacrifice of Christ actually accomplishes biblically with what Rome teaches the sacrifice of Christ accomplishes, since they're different things, they can't be the same sacrifice. That was the whole argument. And 35 years later, that's January of 90, 35 years later, what's my argument? Same thing. And that same concept then came up in the first debate. For whom did Christ die? And you can't have a meaningful discussion of that without asking the question, what does the sacrifice of Christ accomplish? And that's why I've been convinced ever since I wrote that it's Reformed folks who are willing to say strong things about the harmony of the Father, Son, and Spirit and bring about the salvation of the elect, that the focus of the gospel is the glory of God, not making people feel warm and squishy about themselves. That's Reformed folks that can be consistent in providing the strongest response to Roman Catholic claims. And that non-Reformed folks are in essence agreeing with Rome on constituent elements of the doctrine of the atonement in the New Testament. And I think as a result are compromised and cannot provide as strong a defense as should be provided in regards to the Roman Catholic position. So, Dan Chapa has done numerous debates with Turret and Fan. They do programs together on various topics. But they've also debated each other on various topics regarding Calvinism. Dan is a evangelical Arminian Molinist. And, you know, I reach for the Advil bottle as soon as Molinism gets mentioned. And after having done that debate in Houston, if I never had to talk about Molinism again, I would be a very happy man. I truly would. I've said everything I need to say about that. But Dan's a really nice guy, easy to get along with. He did most of the responsive type stuff to questions and things like that, not the cross-X, because the debate format for the first debate was without a doubt the most complicated format I had ever tried to follow. Part of that's because it's a 2-on-2 thing. But also because it had cross-examination right after when someone would speak. Which, if you're actually doing cross-X, isn't a bad idea. In other words, because normally when you get to cross-examination in a one-on-one debate, it's been an hour since the positive side made their case. And most of the people in the audience have lost a lot of the specifics, shall we say, in that process. So there's nothing wrong with it. But most people don't know how to do cross-examination quickly, right after someone's made a presentation. And so I had to do cross-examination after their opening. Joshua Ferris, Dr. Joshua Ferris, didn't seem to understand how debate works. He's going first. That means you have the burden of proof. But his opening statement was an attack on me and the Whitean view, whatever in the world that is. I wasn't the topic of the debate. There was a burden to be borne, and it needed to be a biblical argument. But that's not what we were given. We were given a critique of his understanding of my position as I have expressed it primarily in the Potter's Freedom. Well, okay. Doesn't really help the debate very much, but there it went. And so once Dan started speaking, then you started getting standard Arminian biblical argumentation. So you can interact with that. You can respond to that. Once in a while, the other guy would pop in, but it was pretty rare. Even though he then did the closing statement. And again, they didn't seem to be on the same page. I don't know they believe the same things, and what I would challenge on that, I get, what do you think about that? Well, I don't really know one way or the other. It was really wishy-washy. It was really squishy. I'm not sure how they got teamed up, but I don't think they were the best team to have in that situation. But again, very short-term preparation in finding folks, and people have to travel. You have to make travel arrangements, hotel arrangements, whatever else it might be. So it is what it is. But it seemed to me, well, Jeremiah's presentation, when he, I gave my standard Trinitarian Harmony Gospel, Romans 8. Dan did try to respond to the Romans 8 thing, but I don't think it went very far at all. And then went to Hebrews 7. And there was at least a marked difference between the two sides as to how we dealt with Scripture. There has to be. Because on that subject, what you always get, it just does not matter. I've made this comment. Wow. I have a vague recollection. What was that really? Weird guy. Yeah, I realize that's insufficiently specific. There was a guy I debated online, and I thought it was on that subject. And Algo would remember, because I remember Algo was listening that night and participating in the channel, as I recall. What was his name? Anyway, it just reminded me of the same things that I had said to that guy, and that is the text that I was using. You could go for at least a few verses on one topic, and it was the topic that I was using it for. So, the golden chain of redemption, followed by the law court picture in Romans chapter 8. Hebrews chapter 7, Melchizedek priesthood, keeps his priesthood permanently, able to save to the uttermost. Hebrews 9, Hebrews 10, by one will have been perfected. Multiple chapters in a row, all on the same subject, all coming to the same conclusion. The other side has something very different. The other side has individual verses, and the argument is, well, I interpret this verse to say this, and therefore, because it says this, we can't interpret other verses to say something different. And it doesn't matter if the verse that I am quoting actually has nothing to do with the topic at hand. I'm just looking at what this verse says, I'm coming to a conclusion, and then I'm making application elsewhere. That's taking short little acontextual verses and building an entire case out of that, rather than going to entire passages that are on the subject, letting them determine things. And you know, that was one of the arguments I made in here, was when, actually it might have been Answers to Catholic Claims, which they both count at the same time. They're originally one book, and the book ended up being too big, and so we changed things right toward the end. Anyway, when Rome tries to deal with the doctrine of justification by appealing to texts like wisdom is justified by her children, as if that's definitional of what justification means in Paul. That's the kind of thing we're talking about here. That's not what wisdom is justified by. It's not talking about the doctrine of justification. But when you try to get it involved, you're probably doing that because your arguments from the scriptures are not very strong at all. And that's what we had in that debate. And so I did want to mention this. I didn't, because I wasn't feeling real well. Like I said, the heart was going bonkers. But I almost, after that debate, I stayed seated for a while. You probably didn't see that because the feed ended. But I greeted most of the people who came up to me afterwards sitting down. And I almost got up and walked over and asked Dr. Ferris to see his notes. Why? Because I had made a comment during CrossX. Actually, it was during audience questions, not CrossX. From my vantage point, I could see what somebody was reading from. And so Dr. Ferris had made his opening statement from prepared notes. He's reading it directly from a manuscript. And then he read his closing statement, because we were wondering, Jeremiah and I are wondering, I wonder how they're going to do this, because we divided ours up. Jeremiah went first, took 3 minutes, and then I did my thing. And I was watching. And when Dr. Ferris first got up, the printed page that he had, like 2 pages. The printed page, has the text that's come out of a laser printer. And there were some scribbled notes at the top of the first page there weren't any scribbled notes on the second page that I could see. And so I in his closing statement, it's talking about how I have failed to this and I have failed to do that. But it was already written before the debate started. And so this is not the first time I've encountered this. The first time I encountered it was with Leighton Flowers. And then the debate last summer with the open theist type guy up in Denver. And then this, where you have somebody reading notes in their conclusion, not just notes, but the actual text, reading from a manuscript, about how I have failed in the debate to do something. I have no respect for that. I have zero respect for that. And so he made a comment later on. I had handwritten notes, and I was this close to standing up and saying, could I see your notes? Because I'd like to see if they said that I have failed this evening to do X, Y, and Z in the typewritten stuff. Not the scribbled notes, but what you were reading. And from what I could see behind him, looking from this direction, he did not have scribbled notes on the last page, which is where that material was found. So, but I didn't do it. I decided to let it slide because I think most people recognize that doing the Whiteyan view thing was not only disrespectful to Jeremiah, because Jeremiah made a really interesting presentation based on John 3:16 for limited atonement. So, that's not how you normally hear that presented, and he did a real good job with that. But to only stand up and talk about the Whiteyan view was disrespectful to Jeremiah, and I think most people realize wasn't overly helpful at all. So, outside of that, I thought it, once again, dealt with the issues, and I think someone who listens to those two debates together will recognize just how closely related they were, and that we were basically arguing the same point on both nights. I was, anyways. Obviously, Jeremiah wasn't the second night, but that Arminianism, and I don't know what Ferris is, some type of Anglican something. He said he was a former Reformed Baptist, but now he's something else, and he repeatedly talked about the consensus of the church. It really did. I think most people who listened to both debates went, that's pretty weird. The Anglican was saying the same stuff as the Roman Catholic was. That's interesting. And it is interesting. So, but useful. And again, I'm very thankful to 12.5 Church for putting all this stuff on and getting it out there and giving us good copies of it to be able to have for people to look at. And I hope that you will. So don't forget, I'm going to be jumping on here in a few minutes with Jeremiah. We're going to talk a little bit more about all of this. And then next Tuesday, Timothy Easley, deep dive on Ignatius and the foolishness of the idea that you're attacking Ignatius if you recognize the historical reality of the state of the manuscripts and stuff like that. So that'll be coming up on Tuesday. So thanks for watching the program. I'm going to jump on with Jeremiah here. We'll see you next time. God bless.